Hey everybody, welcome back to Divulgence. Today I am very excited. I have David Charles Plate here, writer, content creator, podcaster, researcher. He runs the Sync Book is his website, and he looks at synchronicity in multimedia. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So please help me welcome David Charles Plate. David, how are you, my friend?
Hi, I'm good. Hey, just so you know, I have my page on the website, thesyncbook.com. That page is actually run by Alan Abadessa Green
Oh,
and Guillaume, our friend in France. And yeah,
okay.
I definitely manage my section of that website, which contains, I think, over 200 sync films at this point. So
Yeah, you got a lot of them, man. I was looking through them. You got a lot of them. So, I guess first of all, I'm sure a lot of the people listening in the chat right now are familiar with you, but for people who are going to watch and listen who aren't familiar with you, can you tell us, what you're into, what you do, and then get a little bit into what this studying of synchronicity and media is all about?
Okay, so I've been looking at synchronicity since basically around junior high. In junior high, I got into pairing albums with films and exploring that. So I was turned on to it initially by just a comment that my brother made. He didn't show it to me. I showed it to myself, but he told me about playing The Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and it just like it was just the idea of that you would mute the film and let the album play just fascinated me. And then in my experience of it, seeing the way that each round it makes, it gets even more pronounced in specific ways. So like, for obvious biggest example would be what feels like almost like a payoff if you actually entertain it and pay attention all the way through, that point where Dorothy lands on her bed, right, after she clicks her heels together, and you have the line of home, home again, I like to be here when I can. Just like the way that just delivers itself, like within the song Time, was just so profound to me. I was just rocked by it. And so I started just getting every Pink Floyd album I could at the time. So I'm 44. So this was a long time ago. I'm talking, you
You
know,
look 20, my friend. That's for damn sure.
Okay, thanks. Well, so I became obsessed initially with just Pink Floyd, and I went through every Pink Floyd album and exploring every possibility I could before I even moved on to just exploring anything else. And what really struck me was the way that Pink Floyd like originally just did soundtracks. So also speaking of my brother, he showed me Pink Floyd's The Wall for the first time, which was playing on VH1 late at night, and we stayed up and we watched it, and we had to wait through commercials or whatever in between, but I was like, so they made a movie that's just a big music video that's mostly just on mute with volume coming up intermittently. Like, people will be speaking in that film and you won't always hear what they're
Yeah.
saying. It's just like, and I was like, so because I at that point I had watched Dark Side of the Moon with the Wizard of Oz first, and so I was like, so they just did this. And then I looked at Obscured by Clouds with the Valley. So the obvious thing to do, which was really difficult at the time, is to get a copy of the film The Valley. That is the soundtrack Obscured by Clouds is for. So like, uh, those go together. Like, those, as far as I can tell, are meant to be viewed together, like in the same way. Same thing with the album More and the film More. So like, I just dedicated all my free time for the longest time to just exploring different possibilities for this, and everything will sync with everything to some degree. That's just the nature of things. Like, if you just play the radio with commercials on mute, you'll find things that are like, oh wow, like, that'll just happen. But what really fascinates me is when it gets very specific and when it crosses a definite line where it's just so uncanny that and also that you can there's something scientific in it, that you can record something, you can share it and relay it, and if anybody, just all that's required is that they pay attention. If they don't pay attention, they can discount it all they want, but if they pay attention, in certain cases you just can't deny that there's a a line that gets crossed, is the way I'd put it. So I'm also not of the belief that if you entertain intentionality, that would be as meticulous as some people might, assume, like in terms of how one might go about achieving that. If there's any intention whatsoever, the nature of things leans towards synchronicity. Like nature is synchronicity, you know what I mean? So like our goings on, we usually differentiate, for the most part. Like we're not supposed to be governed by these higher principles, and we're supposed to be more like chaos, like these are creative projects that people did. So my feeling is if one was just to give it a push, it doesn't take that much, like in terms of intention, you know what I mean? Like in terms of the fine tuning of that, it's not as meticulous as one might think, even though things can feel that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. So this is really cool. It's really interesting. So is that your primary focus when it comes to syncing multimedia, movies and albums, or do you also look at some other stuff like books or commercials or what geez, I don't know what else, magazine, I guess.
It's
Yeah,
everything. So I'm really into Carl Jung. So he coined the term to just describe a coincidence with meaning attached, and meaning is self-objective. You know what I mean? Like it's up to the person who what you see yourself in it. So there's something kind of gonzo about that meaning in the first place, that you're in it, like you're part of it, like just perceptually, like your perceptual experience is embedded in the thing that you're looking at just by the nature of the thing. So I see it everywhere. I see it in everything to greater and lesser degrees. I also see the nature of magic is not necessarily against nature. It's actually moving with higher principles of nature that people sometimes discount, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. This is great. I'm really happy that we finally got together. So how does you when you're pairing the albums and the movies, is it essentially because I was actually going to ask you about the muting and dialogue and stuff like that, and then you brought up The Wall, where there is some dialogue, but it is mostly music. So do you watch these movies always muted with the album or soundtrack, whatever you want to call it, running, and then when I guess if the soundtrack ends, you just restart it? Is that how it works? Or do you
Right. So this is the syntax of this, is that like there was a time where I was doing some of these with just like literally like a vinyl record and like a Technics turntable and VHS. Or I would be using VHS with a CD, since I've been doing this for so long. In those cases, the film's just muted. Like that's just the way it is. Like, for years, that's what I would do. Using an editing program, like I use Pinnacle, but I could be using Final Cut or anything like that. It's another level, because it allows me in certain instances to raise volume of a film in between vocals. So sometimes I'll just go through the whole thing like that. There are times where I will like spend multiple all-nighters fiddling with something like that. Get to the end of it, watch it, and feel like it was better on mute, and just like scrap it. Like it depends. It tells me what it wants, kind of, and the sync itself kind of does that too, right? So like I have to listen to it. So it's like, and also like I end up getting exposed to music and films that I would not otherwise watch in all likelihood. And sometimes there'll be even stuff, there'll be a lot of musicians that I'm not even into. Like I don't care for the music per se, but in the context of a sync, I relate to it differently. So like, for example, I had recently, I saw that Katy Perry album was released the day and year as the film The Substance. And so 143. And so I paired that along with the previous album called Smile to that film, and some extraordinary stuff happened, and I'm blown away by it. And I can watch it over and over again. Does that mean I'm necessarily going to like play a Katy Perry album on my own while I'm cleaning the house or something? No.
Absolutely not.
But but in the context of the sync, it's it's different. You know what I mean? Like it's just it's something else. So did I answer your question? I don't even know.
Yeah, for sure you did. Okay. So that brings me to another question, actually. So sometimes your pairings of these films and music is sometimes done with like some sort of like symbolic meaning or some sort of connection, like you just mentioned.
Right. So it depends. So I'll notice sometimes that there's something indicators about a film, like if something's speaking to something else directly, I might want to just go and run an experiment. For example, recently there was a film that came out called Together with Alison Brie and Dave Franco, and at the end of that movie, they play a record of the Spice Girls. So the obvious thing for me was just to look
Okay.
at the Spice Girls record. And then I'm like, wait, Spice Girls catalog? What? They only had 2 or 3 albums, including Spice World. So I run the experiment, and I haven't released this one. I haven't uploaded it, which is true for a lot of them. You know, even as many as I have online, there's like way more that I just have existing either in my hard drive or I just ran the experiment. But that would be an example of where like I see a direct connection, like this album is named in the film, like they're just speaking to it directly. So I might do something like that. I'll look at release dates. If, like I was just saying about the Katy Perry and the Substance, like this is if they came out the same day and year, or there's just, you know, there's strange things that happen. Like I was looking at that film Gravity, and I look at the release date of it, and I see the day and year that the film Gravity came out, which is with George Clooney and stuff. You know, like I'm like, just, you know, what albums came out the same day and year, and I see that what was it? Oh my God, Miley Cyrus came out with her album that has like Wrecking Ball, and I
Okay.
was like, oh, I don't have to do this now, do I? Like, do I have to just like sit here and play this? Because it's just like, well, that's pretty direct. Wrecking Ball, the thing gets destroyed in space. Okay, that actually makes sense. So, but then I look at, well, what else came out around the same time? So I see the day after that came out, Nick Cave released an album called Push the Sky Away. And I'm like, Gravity, Push the Sky Away? Interesting. So I just run the experiment. I never heard the album before. Twice in the album, he name drops Miley Cyrus. So he says Miley Cyrus in a swimming pool or whatever, and then he even says Montana. What's her name? What's her show's name? Hannah Montana. So he says that too in the album. So
Oh
I'm like,
shit.
so the day after that album comes out, he releases this album, name dropping her twice, and it's a profound sync. I highly recommend it, like I would most that I bothered to upload and put online. But it's just like, it's like, is that like understand the context for me is that I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, well, I'm watching this instead of Miley Cyrus, and then he's speaking to Miley Cyrus. Like he doesn't name drop any other musicians in the album that I can remember. Like it's just like, so it's so specific. So it's like, and that's the nature of genuine synchronicity, is it'll just get so specific. You're like, okay, no, really though, you can't prove synchronicity. You can't prove irony in the same way. If I tell you that something's ironic, I might have 10 people around me or whatever that are all like, yeah, that's totally ironic. And then somebody can go, I don't see the irony. That's not ironic. And there's no way that you can technically prove to that person that there's irony. Synchronicity is the exact same thing. Like you could see it, and you could know, and certain people just will see it and they're like, you can't deny how synchronistic that is. And somebody else could be like, no, 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 whatever. Things happen, you know. You're like, okay.
You definitely answered my next question. I was going to get into that. Like, what notion are you under? Like, do you accept that, you know, there isn't meant, like, officially meant to be any connection, but what you see is maybe not necessarily what others might see, but
Right.
you're able to kind of pick it out from your perception, right?
Right. Also, it's like a line in the sand. You know, it's like it's in Forrest Gump when he's at Lieutenant Dan's grave, and he's like, you know, Mom always said everything happens for a reason. You know, that there's an order or what, I don't remember his exact wording. And he's like, but Lieutenant Dan said we're all just floating around like a bunch of balloons with no rhyme or reason or nothing. He says, I think maybe it's both. I think maybe both are happening at the same time. So like that's just like I was saying before about like if you entertain intentionality on the parts of directors, film editors, musicians, you know, producers, like it's just, you know, oh yeah. Okay.
Or is that Jimmy's grave?
I think so. I think that's where it happens. Yeah, if I remember correctly, but yeah.
Okay. All right. So no, that totally makes sense. That makes sense. And I love that because I find that I make so many interesting kind of connections and stuff in my head, and I think like I wonder like if other people can make that connection or not. So in your experience, I mean, like obviously you have a lot of people that admire your work and respect you very much, but are there people that say straight up like, no, I really don't see that, like I don't know what you're talking about, like, you know,
Right. That's why I say
not in a way like
yeah.
not in a way where they're saying like oh like your stuff sucks, you're stupid, but like but from an actual like I'm trying to see what you see, but I just can't see it, like I don't see it, you know what I mean?
I've never had it where somebody actually sat through and paid attention
Okay.
to an entire album film pairing and not said something of like, some acknowledgement, but the requirement is that they can't talk over it and look away the whole
Yeah,
time
like
and
you said, they have
react
to
to it
change.
like because there's certain, it's fascinating because I've been doing this for so long and I've like try and line things up, like now I edit them together and somebody can just push play and watch them. But the
Right.
ritual of it traditionally is that that lion, when he roars on the third roar, you want to get that heartbeat started right then and there, and then you're like, okay, now nobody touch the CD player
Hey,
because if it skips at all, that's it for the
I'm off.
experiment. So it's
Yeah.
like, and then you can't go back also. Like if you're sitting with somebody and you see that they're totally just looking away, or nowadays they're looking at their phone. It didn't used to be so much of an issue at all that somebody's just looking at their phone, but if they pull out their phone and I'm sitting there, it's just like, okay, you know what, at this point now things can happen really fast, like big things, like, and sometimes it can seem
Because it could be
subtle,
one word, right? It could be
it
just
could
one
be,
word.
yeah, there's just things that
Think they want to see
happen
an
that you're
action
like that.
or one
If you
frame or
but for people who are paying attention, that's the only real requirement. Like I say,
yeah.
just can you do that, yeah. And it gets more and more difficult as time goes by for people to have attention span, because things will connect back too. So like there's examples, like one of my favorites is like this film Bitter Moon, which is actually a Polanski film, and Honeymoon by Lana Del Rey. Like I love that pairing. For one thing, just like the way that the album fits into the film is like it's like a lock and key. Literally, like, and there's a lot of examples of this kind of phenomenon where the album will double, right? So you just loop the album, but then the title song is the first song, and the title song will play at the end. So it loops, that particular example loops exactly twice, and it plays that title song, Honeymoon. It plays it 3 times. It's the only song to play 3 times. So it bookends the album, so to speak. The bookends the sync. So like if you start the album the second that the movie starts, that song, the third time it plays, will end the exact second before credits start. So there's lots of examples of that kind of thing happening where it's like, wait, no, did it really just fit that way? So what I was going to say is, in regards to this, is that the movie itself, it twists at very particular times. So it relates to karma. So you'll have like somebody's on one side of the dynamic of a power struggle, and then when the film shifts and you have now the person who was the oppressed becomes the oppressor, it flips back and forth, the album flips too. And the way that this is a particularly long album, so it has like, there's like a section in it that feels almost like it would be the end of the album, but then it keeps going, where there's like, she has this kind of like poetic section. So like where she's just talking about time and the nature of circumstance. She's basically talking about synchronicity, but she's talking about time future, time past, and time present. And it just so happens that as she's saying this in this pairing, the character of Peter Coyote, he gets injured in something that was just at that moment, had he just things been slightly different, he wouldn't have gotten hit by a car. And then all the tables turn because of this injury. So, and the way that the album meets that is like when the songs repeat in this pairing, it becomes like there's like I say, like synchronicity is like irony. It's like there's ironic, like extreme irony in the lyrical content, the way it kind of mirrors the way that it was speaking to it the first time. So like, the nature of lyrics as poetry is such that it it can have double to triple meanings, you know? Like it's one of the, so you can see that in the way that the film plays out, that now you can relate to this lyric in this way. So like some of the best bands of like the 60s and 70s, especially, like in order to get certain things on the radio that wouldn't be allowed on the radio, you have to use kind of like next level innuendos. The Beatles were notorious for this. The Doors were as well. Where you have songs like, obvious ones would be like "Come Together." "Come Together" is about a guy who likes three ways. Like that's why it's one and one is three. Why is he? Why he's got to be good looking because he's so hard to see. Why is he hard to see? Because he's got two people on top of him. Like that's the song. Like "Moonlight Drive" by the Doors is totally about having sex with somebody who's menstruating and not worrying about them getting pregnant. That's why it ends with "Baby's gonna drown tonight." Like that's why it's "Let's swim to the moon," because it's the tide. Let's climb through the tide. It's that that's the song. It played on the radio. Like they couldn't just say what it is at the time. Censorship was such, and people were kind of prudes or whatever. If people wouldn't want that kind of thing out, but so you had to navigate it in that way. But the point is that when you're playing with lyrics and you have these different meanings, like, so for me, it feels like if I was, once again, to entertain intentionality in any given example, what would be the rationale? Part of the more obvious things would be that it would allow the musician or the film creator, depending on the timing of which came out first, if you're going there, to have their own relationship to the thing that they're putting out in the world. Even if you're not talking album film stuff, but just like the nature of subliminal, like beyond just like, oh, we're trying to program the masses to have this or that position. But if you just think about it like from a creative angle, it's like Barton Fink. Like if you're tasked with doing something that's like totally superficial and lame, but you have to do it, you're making a wrestling picture, you understand? And you want to have some depth in it. Like this is what justifies Jake Coates's definition of synchromysticism as profundity in the mundane. Finding profundity in the mundane is because sometimes people that are put in a compromised position where they have to produce something that's mundane, that they might embed something with depth into that. So like I see that happen a lot in films where you're like, this is like a C movie or a B movie, but there's like, wait, what are they communicating? You know what I mean? Like there can be things of value in things that on the surface are really superficial. So yeah, but I can appreciate the idea that somebody might want their own connection to their work, and also that speaks to the idea that if any artist was to do anything intentional like this, that there's like it's encoded in that way, to admit it would destroy everything. You could never do that. And that's why if I was to ever try and like, even here, like I have to qualify, like I'm not asserting in any, no matter how pronounced it is, I'm not going to assert that this is a matter of fact intentional. I can say my Occam's razor might be that, but I don't ultimately know unless if I'm told. And I also respect and appreciate why, if that were the case, why they can never tell you. So like when Roger Waters will get super like unusually defensive when somebody brings up Dark Side of the Moon, The Wizard of Oz, where it's just like, people just, it's like, dude, you made film soundtracks. Why are you so defensive? Well, maybe it's to do with that. If he said that this was the case, it would remove the magic, it would remove the mystery, it would remove like the experience for the tripper who like presses play at that moment and has it's got a mystical feeling to it that if somebody admits, then that's gone. It's gone, So yeah, so I wouldn't recommend that they do that myself.
Fair enough, man. Damn, that was some deep shit. I like that. I appreciate that. I agree, and I agree with that. Interesting, very interesting. Yeah, it's interesting also to see when you hear directors getting questioned on plot lines and different stuff like that, and their reactions to it. Some of them seem pretty devoted to keeping the mystery alive, as you might say, and stuff like that. So yeah, for sure. You also have you have, I think it's like a 7-hour doc or a project called "Sorry, Cassandra, I Misunderstood. Everything Predicts 9/11." That's one of yours, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so can you tell us a little bit about that? Do you have like
Sure.
a lot of kind of research and insight into 9/11 predictions and stuff like that? Because those are always
Right.
pretty interesting.
So if you want to, so the larger context of how this project came to be was that a friend of mine, I think at this point it's okay to say his name, but Joe, I'll just call him Joe.
Okay.
Joe used to play for the Chicago Bulls, and he had an injury, and years later was being given pitches for where he could play basketball, and they were almost entirely, well, they were all overseas. The only place that he was given as an option in the US was to play for the Santa Cruz Warriors, which itself was a sink. So this guy is also a total sink head who is into Jay Kotza and all of this stuff. And so I got a phone call from Joe saying, if I play for the Santa Cruz Warriors, can we produce a sync film together? And or not like an album film thing, but like a video, like he wanted to do a project. And I said, absolutely. I never ended up doing that with him, though we spent a lot of time together while he was playing here. And I would show him sync films, and he actually sat in on a study session with my rabbi, I think twice, at least once, if not twice. But in that study session, we were literally going over 9/11 in the Zohar, which is a whole other could be its own long conversation. I dedicated 2.5 years of my life I dedicated over 10 years of my life to transcribing the Zohar, but I dedicated 2.5 years of my life to transcribing 2 specific sections of the Zohar that predict 9/11 overtly. And so, and that just so happened to be during the time in which Joe was playing for the Santa Cruz Warriors. And during that time, he was working on a video that ended up being called Back to the Future Predicts 9/11. So my name is in the credits along with a lot of people and he didn't include his own name in the credits because he's just cool like that. But after that came out, like we continued to communicate about, film stuff, and I wanted to produce a sequel, but my computer was having difficulties. I had an old computer. Joe is so freaking cool. He actually sponsored me. So he bought me a computer, which is the computer that I produced this 7.5 hour long film collage on. So this isn't done in the style of Back to the Future Predicts 9/11, which is a 10-minute film that's narrated with all this communication around it. What happened for me was I took a handful of mushrooms before a midnight showing of The Shining.
Oh, damn.
And I'm waiting for about 15 to 20 minutes for the movie to start, and the lights don't go off. Eventually a guy comes out. He's like, we can't get the reel working. You can have free tickets to see Paranormal Activity 2 if you want. Sorry. So I'm just like, oh crap. And I walk out of the theater. I got my money back, and I'm walking around downtown Santa Cruz high as hell, having wanted to see The Shining. And it struck me that, when 2001 A Space Odyssey came out, the title, the advertisements for it said The Ultimate Trip, right? And this is 1968, where people were taking LSD. LSD lasts, about 8 hours generally, and so at least the most intense part of that journey. And I was like, dude, how many people went to go see 2001 A Space Odyssey in its day, dropped acid, and then had to deal with all the rest of those hours while they're high? Because the movie's only, 142 minutes long. So I was like having that feeling of that experience. I was like, I want to make a movie. So like while I was walking around the street at night, I was like, I want to make a movie that's like the length of a trip. So if you were to call it The Ultimate Trip, you could actually sit down and just like, it could just like be the whole thing. You could just like enjoy this film for the duration of a full trip. And I wanted to make it so that it had the same kind of like the same rise, climax, you know, like it has an intermission, like it has a story. Even though it's a film collage, there is a definite story. Things tie back to things at the beginning and reconcile themselves in all kinds of ways. But the only way that it'll really work is if somebody was actually paying attention for 7.5 hours. So I was like, one thing I love about Stanley Kubrick is that he always had like the highest opinion of his audience. Like he, in other words, like he didn't dull things down to the to you know, like he treated it that you know that if you were paying absolute attention, here are the things that you'd catch. You know, like he doesn't downplay the intelligence of the viewer. So, and also, you know, you know, Kubrick is known to have had this kind of attitude that he's emphasized, where the least enjoyable way to present something to get people to really, you know, process it is to explain it all. Like if you can get people to the point where they have to figure it out for themselves and then have that aha moment, you know, then the thrill of discovery gets you on a deeper level. So that's the idea. Sorry, Cassandra, I misunderstood everything predicts 9/11. It's a response to Back to the Future predicts 9/11 that my friend made.
Gotcha.
But it presents it as though it's this, you know, like Kubrickian kind of like, here, I'm not going to explain everything to you, but it's all here if you're paying attention, if that makes sense.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Wow, that's quite a project. Yeah, that must have taken a while to
I did the whole thing. My hard drive crashed. I lost everything.
no.
I had to not just start over from scratch, but get all the components again to rebuild it. Yeah, that happened. But I'm actually like, I'm happier with this than I was the original version that I don't even have anymore at all. So yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So is there any 9/11 syncs, 9/11 related syncs that we can talk about, either that are in there or that you know of?
So this is kind of complicated. What this film actually does is it takes the formula or the template of 9/11, like the archetypes behind it, and it basically explores another example of that and ties it to 9/11. So it's a whole complicated story. I could get into the particulars of that have to do with the two biggest hotel fires in the United States, which included the Weinkauf Hotel in what was that, 1917 or something? And no, 40, in the 40s? I forget. It's been so long since I went into this. And the MGM Grand in 1980. And so there's I don't know how you say this, like there's profound synchronicity between these two events, these two hotel fires, and they relate to a film that came out the day and year of the fire at the MGM Grand, which the film was called the Visitor, and The Visitor synchronizes with ABBA's album The Visitors that came out around the same time, and which was ABBA's last album, and so the movie kind of like centers around that while connecting everything to the kind of archetypal aspects of 9/11 as it relates to Freemasonry, you know, and Kabbalah. So you have the two towers are completely resonant with the two pillars of Solomon's Temple, the two pillars of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, and the two pillars in every Masonic hall. And even the ratio of one tower to the other, as pointed out by Scott Onstott, as proven by Scott Onstott, is actually the exact same ratio within one tower to the other in every Masonic hall. They're not actually technically the same height. So yeah, pretty nuts.
Jeez, okay. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah. That's some deep shit for sure.
Yeah, it's always a question when these things come up. It's like, how much detail do I want to go into? And at this point, how much detail am I able to lay out compared to what it was when I was like immersed in it? And that's a thing with Kabbalah study too. Like, I mean, I studied Kabbalah for so many years. Like when you're in it, it's like talking the math and stuff, like there's particulars like to memorize. Like, you know, you had Alex Fulton on here recently. Like he's great with memorizing dates and numbers,
Yeah,
and like it's like
for
he's
sure.
very mathematically minded, you know. So like I'm sometimes able to keep track of all that stuff, but sometimes it's also kind of difficult. But yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Is there well, I mean, there could be more than one, but is there one that you can think of, or something that you can think of, like a specific song that seemed to have like a really significant presence in a movie? Like it, if it pops up a few times in a movie, it seems to be popping up in very interesting parts.
What do you mean? Like you mean like in a soundtrack of a film? Like what do you mean?
When you're doing a sync, like,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
follow.
So if like sometimes you might find that, oh, this song coming up at this moment, you might find meaning in it, or maybe you might find meaning within the song, connecting to a scene, the lyrics, something like that. But is there a song that's saying that, where is there a song, or is there a sync where a song seems to have come up a few times in that sync, where it's like, wow, that, that song is really feels very significant to this movie, not just the
Yeah, I'd say
parent.
pretty much every single one I've ever done probably has an example of that. So
Oh,
like,
okay. Wow. Okay.
but just as you're speaking, I'm having certain things just come to mind. One would be um Atomic Blonde. So
Okay.
like there's a movie Atomic Blonde, and
Yeah.
there's Blondie's album that has Atomic, which is called Eat to the Beat. Eat to
Okay.
the Beat pairs with Atomic Blonde so freaking well, it's ridiculous. But there's a song in there called Accidents Never Happen. And she's just, the song itself is just describing synchronicity to the max. And in one of the times where that song plays, and also the song Atomic, the way it lands with the film both times is just like out of this world. But there's one of the times that Accidents Never Happen plays. There's a car accident while the song is playing, and if you look at the license plate, it has 9/11 on there, and there's just something just so insane about like like this movie's about espionage, Atomic Blonde, with Charlize Theron, you know. By the way,
Yeah.
Charlize Theron, it's such it's like the archetype casting is out of control with her, just like it is for a lot of people. Like you could say Jennifer Connelly or Jim Carrey or something, where you're like, whoa, dude, like what
Okay.
is happening there? But like her first line of any movie that, or first appearance in any movie ever, was Children of the Corn 3, where they're reading from the Book of Revelation and talking about the beast. And Theron isn't spelled the same way, Charlie, in her name, Charlize Theron, as Megatheron, the beast in Greek, but
Okay.
like she has this like resonance with that all the times that Jake Coates has pointed this out. Every time she like she's in that film Monster, but like her saying the word monster, how many times throughout her career she says it, and also how often she drinks. Like she drinks like alcohol, like in every goddamn movie. It doesn't matter what the frick it is. Like it could be Eon Flux, it could be Prometheus. It's just like even the ones where you wouldn't expect it, she's always drinking alcohol. And he made the connection of like AA, because you have AA in the OTO, like it's like as a secret society. Like anyone could be a member of the AA. You have to be like certified, like not certified, how would you say it, to be ordained into the OTO, so to speak. Like
Right.
with anyone can be like, if you like are into Aleister Crowley, you could be a member of the AA, right? But it's like there's that argument that could be the subliminal. I don't really know, but it's just there's weird reoccurring thing with her. But yeah, anyway, I don't know.
Okay. Um, I'd love to talk about uh, your Kubrick syncs. Can we get into some of those? Because I know you've done maybe every movie, but I know you've done a good handful of them. Done Lolita 2001 that I've seen. Uh,
Yeah, there's Lolita that I pair with Please Please Me by the Beatles. That's the Kubrick one, but the the one from what was his name? It's the director of Fatal Attraction and Jacob's Ladder. I forget his name, but he did his version of Lolita. Um, that
oh, yeah.
is that pairs with Pulp's album, This Is Hardcore, which is just great. But
Adrian Lane.
yeah, Adrian Lin, thank you. Yeah. But no, my favorite Kubrick synchronicity is with Eyes Wide Shut with Leonard Cohen's "You Want It Darker," and that makes 4 rounds with the film. It's pretty incredible.
Oh, okay.
And
Let's
that one
okay.
was actually inspired. I went to go see. I went to see a couple talks from rabbis at the Kubrick exhibit at the Jewish Museum in San Francisco several years back. And
Wow.
somewhere online, there's actually a video of me like at one of the rabbis' talks going off about Kabbalah in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Uh,
Wow.
but I walked away from this presentation from this rabbi where he brought up the resonance between this album and this film as they relate to the Klipot. And so he was talking about Kubrick embedding in his work these specific Kabbalistic references. And he was like, Eyes Wide Shut is one such example. 2001 is one such example. And he went into all the details of it. And then I just like joined in and we had like this back and forth and everyone's kind of standing around like, what are you guys talking about? even the Jews in the room were just like, what are you guys saying? Because we're using a lot of terminology. Sometimes with Kabbalah, there's just not sometimes, pretty much always, there's no way to have a real conversation about Kabbalah if you're having to communicate to like somebody who's not familiar with the terminology, because you want to the terminology, then you can go to another level. That's one of the values of studying with a rabbi, is that you can really just like take it somewhere else, whereas like a lot of the time if you're having to go and explain what Gavora is and what the different stuff wrote and what everything, how everything relates, it can be difficult sometimes. But like when the rabbi wasn't doing that with the group, like he wasn't just saying these terms, but I wanted to make a point with him. I wanted to communicate something about how. And so like I just like jumped into this whole thing. But so he was talking about Eyes Wide Shut, You Want It Darker, the resonance there. I tried to send this to him. I never got a response back from him afterwards. So like I went home and I was just like, the whole way I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to try that. And he's just talking about how the album and the film are related. I was like, dude, have you ever thought about playing them together? Maybe, I don't know, see what happens. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Did you get to ask him that, like if he's tried listening
I
to
said
it,
after
or did you
the
just
talk, like
get...
I went off during the talk with this guy, and then afterwards I went home and I did this, and then I tried, at the time, this is years ago, I tried to send it to him, and he never got back to me. I don't even know if he got it, so I don't know. He's a hard person to reach, this rabbi, so
Gotcha.
yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. Anything else that you can tell us about the Eyes Wide Shut sync? Have you synced Eyes Wide Shut with any other albums?
Totally. Yeah, I tried. Like most album film stuff, like I've tried either the album with other things or I've tried the film with other things, and I land on it eventually. Sometimes it just goes and that's settled and I don't try with anything else. But in the case of Eyes Wide Shut, yeah, I tried it with other things over the years. But this is the one for me that's just like, holy cow, So yeah. It's a shorter album, which makes it crazy, because like it's a really long movie. So to play a short album with a long movie, but it is what it wants to be, that, and it works. So there you have it. There's somebody in the sync community who actually made like an edit of them to like, he took each one of those 4 rounds and just took the song You Want It Darker and just like kind of, have you seen that? Yeah, he edited it all together, so it's like a music video with all the sections. So it's how each part happens to land when you just play it through, but he took every time that song plays and just made it into one video, and it's freaking nuts. But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think he goes by JJ Draw. I don't know where he's at these days, but yeah.
I'll write that down. JJ Draw. All right, shout out.
Yeah. I can send you the video on YouTube too after this too, if you want to check it out. But yeah.
What before we get off Eyes Wide Shut, is what are your thoughts on that movie in general? Like, what's
my favorite film of all time? For
sure.
Yeah,
right on, man. I love Eyes Wide Shut for sure. I just got my Criterion collection copies, and Sean McCann told me ahead of time that they actually, it's widescreen, unfortunately, but they chopped it even more.
Yeah.
Which is like, damn.
Yeah, I know.
That's too bad.
Yeah, at least they don't do that thing that Siskel and Ebert likened to like Austin Powers, where like they were using the people to hide the sex scenes. So like when that movie first came out, and it was like, you know, our version, you know, it wasn't like, you know, unrated or NC-17 or whatever, and they just like
Yeah.
had to like cover it that way. They're like it was almost unwatchable, you know. So I'm glad we don't have to have that anymore. What the hell? Yeah, no, that's not. And if yeah, and I made sure with the timing of which version I used to pair the album with that it's the true unedited version, which people will argue that there's 20 minutes or whatever missing from the
Yep.
final
That's a
cut.
big
That's
debate.
not, you know,
That's a big debate. Yep.
yeah, it's a big debate. I don't take a position on things that I don't know definitive. Like I'm not like, you know, like would I lean that way? I'm not sure. I mean, Roger Avery recently made a good argument for that on Joe Rogan, you know, and talking about
Right.
narration that's been removed and different things. Apparently that song that's the Gnostic Mass backwards, somebody online is arguing that that was actually like a song that related to the Bhagavad Gita or something. I don't know if it's the Ramayana or what, but they were like, there's some song that was like that was in there, and then in the first showing, and that they changed it after he died. Or I don't know. Unless if I have something that's super concrete, I don't pull the jump to conclusions, Matt, out too quickly on that.
Yeah. Gosh, the jump to conclusions, Matt. I love it.
Yeah.
It's a mat where you can jump.
Yeah. There'd be these
Uh,
different conclusions.
uh, shit, what was I going to say now? Damn it.
Eyes Wide Shut. You got
Yeah, it was something on Eyes Wide Shut. Oh yeah, it would be great. It would be so awesome. Like I remember back in the day when you're using like Kazaa or Morpheus or something to download movies, you know, and the people are bootlegging the movies. It would be fucking amazing if we can get a bootleg copy of the opening, the original Eyes Wide Shut, right? Like if someone had that, that would be amazing.
If you got that, you basically won the internet.
Yeah,
You know
right?
what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that would just
No, what I would like if somebody has it out there would be like a high quality version of Alejandro Jodorowsky's Tusk. If you can get his version of Tusk in high resolution, you won the internet too. That's another way to do it. Yeah, good luck with that. You can find an advertisement that looks like that, but you can't find it. So I don't know. I have a sync with that too. That Tusk from Fleetwood Mac came out around the same time. I think the same year.
Oh,
If you play Fleetwood Mac's Tusk with Jodorowsky's Tusk, it's incredible. But yeah.
is that right? Eh?
Yeah. This movie's about a synchronicity too, by the way. It's a woman who's basically like she kind of has a collective or shared nefesh with this elephant. So they're born at the same time. The woman and the elephant are born at the same time, and they're like psychically connected, basically. But yeah, it's cool. This movie is said to have basically been produced as a mandala of sorts. That it's possible that it didn't even have the intention to ever be officially released for the public. That this movie is a like renunciate film. Like there's a Shivite in the film that basically Jodorowsky is essentially identifying with by making this movie the way he did. Went all out, huge production, and then apparently with no real intention to release it.
Okay. Well, what was the intention? Or is that not known?
To make a film and renounce it? That's the same way that one would put time and energy into building an elaborate mandala only to brush it away.
Okay, I hear you now. Thank you. Okay, wow, that's wild. Okay.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned El Topo actually in the comments on the side here, saying what were they saying? Pair something with El Topo, but I have an El Topo sync with and I got a few Jodorowsky syncs. I got several, but El Topo with the Beatles' "Let It Be" is pretty damn good. The soundtrack for El Topo was actually produced at Abbey Road Studios. Was it Abbey Road or was it? What is it? Wherever Let It Be was produced was Apple Studios, right? They had their own studio for Apple.
Yep.
Which is kind of weird. Like I was tripping out. This is gonna jump all over the place here. But if you watch that show Severance, you know the main office in that show has like this green floor, and the white walls, and then the 4 tables. You know what I'm saying? Like in the show Severance, it looks just like Apple Studios. It's pretty crazy. Like if you ever watch that documentary called Get Back, where there's just all this raw footage of the Beatles,
Yes,
putting
I have seen
together.
Get Back.
So yeah, so it's weird to me that like first of all, Apple computers, Apple bought Apple Records, so Apple bought Apple, and then this is produced by Apple, Severance, and so it's just kind of weird, like the 4 with the green floor. I don't know. I'm just saying, like that feels like
Yeah,
a sync to me. Yeah,
for sure, man. That's a pretty wild. Yeah, that's a wild. That's a
yeah,
sing. That, yeah,
yeah,
that thread's going through all sorts of other threads for sure.
yeah.
Nice.
Other Jodorowsky syncs are Marilyn Manson's Hollywood with the film Holy Mountain. And so like I paired those together and was blown away before I realized that I was unaware that Marilyn Manson officiated. Oh no, excuse me. Jodorowsky officiated Marilyn Manson's wedding, dressed as his character in the Holy Mountain, which is kind of nuts.
Really?
Yeah. And then
What's
I
that
found
all about?
well, if you watch Hollywood and the Holy Mountain, it's kind of I think it kind of becomes apparent. But yeah,
Oh
they're
yeah.
they're
Okay.
they're close. Yeah, they're friends. But it's not just that. It's that this album like basically is this film. Like they meet. It's totally crazy.
Have you done? We got someone in the audience keeps mentioning Vanilla Sky. I think. Have you done?
Oh yeah, actually, I've been meaning to revisit that one, just because it's just from an artistic standpoint. I could have done the ending better and just removed the last song. It's hard to explain. I need to re-edit it and re-upload it, which is true for when you put this many films out there. It's just like there's like little fine tuning points. But
Sure.
so just 2 people that released albums on September 11th, 2001. One most people are aware of that are hip to this area is Jay-Z, because he brags about it. So like he'll be like, I dropped the same day as the 2 towers, I gained power or whatever. But like it's
Yeah, that's right.
the Blueprint was released the same day and year. It's the Blueprint, actually, if you take the is it Oliver Stone? If you take the World Trade Center movie, so there's like a Hollywood movie with Nicolas Cage. If you start, so that movie, the first scene of the World Trade Center movie is Nicolas Cage being woken up by an alarm on 9/11, and he's a firefighter, right? And if you double that album, if you twin that album, The Blueprint, and you align it to the exact second that the credits end, right? So you're looking at the bars and the editing, and you align it to the exact second at the end. It'll make it so that the first song, for the opening of the first song, with the album being doubled, but at the very beginning will start the second that the alarm goes off. So it's like it's completely doubled. So the sync isn't that great. I like it. It's weird, but there's something weird about that movie because so much of it is in darkness. So it almost just feels like it was just edited this way as some kind of weird statement. That's what it feels like. I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm pulling a can of someone's right now. I'm just asking questions. But
Okay, Tucker.
But it just I'm just saying, like it gives that sense that like really this just works that way. The other person who released an album on 9/11/2001 was Bob Dylan, and that album is called Love and Theft. And so if you know about the behind the scenes of Vanilla Sky, they're shooting that movie in New York. It was the first it's incredible commentary from the director. I think was that Cameron Crowe. If you listen to the director commentary to Vanilla Sky, he talks a lot of stuff. He talks about the Beatles' White Album, about how like they filmed at the Dakota. It was the first movie that they like. I mean, I guess it shows up in Ghostbusters when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man is walking around. Like it's very rare for the Dakota to show up in films after the death of John Lennon until 2001.
So it's For what to show up? The Dakota? The what?
The Dakota was where John Lennon was shot, where he was living.
Okay.
Yoko Ono actually still
Dakota.
has
I'm sorry.
as
Okay.
far as I know, she still has a place at the Dakota. She still has an apartment there.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, point being, they filmed at the Dakota. He's supposed to be living at the Dakota, I guess. Tom Cruise's character, and so like so at the beginning of the film, when he pulls out, somebody crosses the street wearing a white shirt that it has a White Album reference on the shirt. I forget what does it say, Helter Skelter maybe, or it says Happiness is Warm. I can't remember. I have to look at it again, but he's there wearing that shirt because of the Beatles connection with Rosemary's Baby. Mia Farrow was traveling with the Beatles before production started. Like, she went directly from hanging out with the Beatles to being starring in Rosemary's Baby. So there's like, so I'm just telling you, like, in the director commentary, he explains that they did this intentionally, to have this guy in the shirt with the Beatles because he's leaving the Dakota, and this was the first movie that they allowed somebody to have somebody living at the Dakota in the film following the death of John Lennon. So all those years later,
Revolution
from 1980 to 2001. But the 9/11 happened while that movie was being shot, Vanilla Sky. And so like, so there was a question at the end whether they would actually keep the two towers there. What's crazy too is that the movie that Vanilla Sky is based off of, that came from Spain, I believe, was called Open Your Eyes. This is the first movie that Tom Cruise did after Eyes Wide Shut.
Damn.
So like, and even in that scene where there would be the two towers in the original version, there's another weird building in Spain that's like a twin building. Like, I couldn't do it justice, you have to see it, but yeah, it's weird, man. Like, they're like and it's also Penelope Cruz is in both movies, and there's also the factor of like Tom Cruise, that he was like with two Scientologists, right? And in both situations they did Love Connection. They were Chuck Wolverine and use that as a verb. They did a Chuck Woolery with Tom Cruise twice. So the first one was Mimi Rogers, because of her father being a prominent Scientologist. Then her father has a falling out with Scientology, and they get broken up. Then I might be oversimplifying a little bit, but this is essentially what happened. Then he got interested in Nicole Kidman before he had actually technically met her in person. And Tom Cruise shared with his higher up Scientologist that he had a vision of like meeting her, like running through a field of wildflowers in a field. And then like, and so the Scientologists, they found a field off in the middle of nowhere, like tried to plant the wildflowers. Instead of just finding a field that already existed, they were like, we're going to manufacture this because this is so symbolic but real. They plant this field of wildflowers. They show up with like helicopters for them to meet at the spot for the first time, and it just ended up being a dirt field with weeds. Like, they didn't take hold. So it's just like that becomes symbolic then of like their whole relationship in this weird way, as far as I can tell. So then they get together and Eyes Wide Shut. So they were the two leading Scientologists in Hollywood at the time of the filming of Eyes Wide Shut. You probably know this stuff around Kubrick's daughter joining Scientology, having to cut off all ties with friends and family, like went before production started. So it makes sense, like if you were to entertain the possibility that he casted these people for symbolic purposes, this would make sense, right? So, you know, because his daughter is not talking to him, and it's because of Scientology, and then he puts the Scientologist in the movie. And even the whole thing that it's not in Dream Story, the novel that Eyes Wide Shut is based off of. Dream Story, first of all, he bought every copy that he could so that other people couldn't, because Kubrick was notorious for that kind of thing in the 70s when he first decided he was going to make a movie out of this book, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I was going to go on a rant, but maybe I don't need to. I don't know what direction. I don't want to get too tangential, but yeah.
Okay. Well, if we're not going to rant, then let's see. We'll move on. I just wanted to point out a couple interesting. They all look really interesting, but just a few that specifically caught my eye, including movies. I guess movies that I really like. I really enjoy this album and this movie. So
Mm-hmm.
this one sounds pretty interesting. Pink Floyd with Capricorn One.
Yeah.
Great movie, lots of kick-ass actors, awesome story, lots going on there. Yeah. So, is there anything you can tell us about this thing?
Sure. I mean, so first of all, like the idea that Kubrick faked the moon landings, I don't personally believe. I was really impacted by a long, long conversation I had with a retired NASA employee.
Okay.
He was like in his 80s, and in the course of a conversation, I like posed him the idea of us faking the moon landing and what he thought of that. Or I didn't just say that. I was arguing about Jay Widener's front screen projection phenomenon,
Yes.
and that you
Okay.
can find this point in these videos. And the guy told me, and he said, I can tell you firsthand that we absolutely went to the moon. He goes, I can also tell you firsthand that we absolutely faked footage. And so I was like, why would you fake footage if you actually went to the moon? And he said, and he listed a whole bunch of reasons. He said, one, that we needed to sell the public on it. And there's a PR angle to the whole thing. He was like, we weren't even sure if we'd be able to shoot. And also, this is military. He's like, the military is all up in what we're doing. NASA was originally a military program. He said, so there's like a need to know basis. He's like, and you're also dealing with a lot of people who were very open-minded to what they could find there. So like they were open to there being fucking aliens or anything. So they were like, we need something to give the public to keep, if there is something that we find, that we can keep it top secret if need be, so that we don't want to just be like, here it is, everybody, whatever they happen to find there, because they're open to anything. And so he's like, so it's multifaceted, but the biggest one, he said, was just selling the public on it. If you have them spending all this money, how are you supposed to justify it unless if you give them something, so that they can look at and be like, wow, we got this. And so if you're then talking front screen projection, so just to iterate for those who aren't familiar with Jay Widener's work,
Please, yeah.
The most, this is also my impression and interpretation, but it's, in my opinion, the most impressive part of 2001, special effects wise, isn't so much the space stuff. Like, the space stuff is cool and everything, even the final sequence and all that stuff, but the most impressive part to me is that the entire opening sequence of 2001, the Dawn of Man section, that's all filmed inside of a studio. So it looks like it's outdoors, right? But it's actually all indoors. And the way that it's done is that you have a front terrain, which they manicure, right? They make they build a terrain, and then they have a projection behind it of an outdoor world, and the terrain needs to, as best as they're able, match the projection that's behind it. So you have, these actors basically in ape outfits, um, you know, hopping around on a terrain in front of, like, it really feels like it's outdoors. And you watch it in the theater and it's all blown up, And so Kubrick was the master at that style of filmmaking. And so when you look at like most of the lunar footage, you can find that there's this line where the terrain clearly changes. That, oh, you're looking at a hill, and then there's what's off in the distance, and it happens over and over and over again. So if that footage was faked, who would make more sense to help them achieve what they achieved with that at the time to convince the public? Now I think they would have taken it. Wouldn't be the same thing. But at the time, that was the special effect that was the most convincing that they had available. It would have been Kubrick, and that would explain Danny with the Apollo sweater with the symbolic launch in 237 and all that stuff. That would make the most sense. When you look at this album cover of Wish You Were Here, these are sound studios. These are
Right.
This is a film studio. The Man on Fire, Shaking Hand, they're making a deal, right? Like, what is Capricorn 1 about? It's about faking a mission to Mars for the public. So it's like, it's a sci-fi movie with O.J. Simpson, a bunch of people, but
That's right. Kelly Savalas.
Yeah, it's a timing too of like when the films came out and the relationship. You're like, it's of the era, it vibes, So I ran the experiment. I enjoy it. This is actually one of the ones that I do volume between the vocals, which is a lot of them, by the way, where I left it that way. But yeah, no, it's yeah.
What do you mean you volume between the vocals? Like you listen to the vocals?
I raised the volume of the film in between the vocals of the album.
Gotcha.
So yeah. So it's like the wall we were saying earlier. Like the wall is just done that way. So I kind of imitate that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Let's see. Let's pull up this one. Yeah. This one seems to be pretty popular as well. Rosemary's Baby with the White Album and Manson Family sings the songs of Charles Manson. So in this one, you do a threesome. Do you do that often? Or
yeah, I mean, here and there, something like that will happen. I have to listen to it. Like when I first put these together, I went to just loop the album. I tried it with a ton of things, following it. So I'm like, because the White Album is quite long, right? And when you go to loop it with like the first round is phenomenal, and then from there it just doesn't make sense, like to follow back in what is happening here with back in the USSR again. Like it just doesn't make sense. So I tried it with Imagine, I tried it with Mind Games, John Lennon albums. I tried it with all kinds of things, and the timing of this particular album and the symbolically what's communicated, this is what it wanted to be. So I follow the White Album with the Manson Family sings, and there you have it. But yeah.
Okay, so it's one after the other. Okay, wow, that's interesting, man. That's crazy. That's a wild collection of works.
This one too, strange tracks with The Haunting of Julia. You've ever heard of that movie? Also known as Full Circle. It's a little obscure.
I think so. Yes. Okay. First Circle. I recognize First Circle. Yeah.
Yeah. So the film Full Circle is with Keira DeLay and Mia Farrow. So Keira DeLay is Dave Bowman from 2001: A Space Odyssey. Mia Farrow is Rosemary from Rosemary's Baby. So first of all, 2001: A Space Odyssey and Rosemary's Baby are basically a meta narrative. Like the two go together. They're so profoundly resonant, it's ridiculous. One relates to, they're both about childbirth. One relates to the birth of the Christ child, or what they call the star child, right? The next phase in evolution at the end of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So the whole thing kind of symbolically follows the birthing of this Christ figure. The Rosemary's Baby is obviously the birth of the Antichrist. So they're antithetical, but they're also complementary. If you start Rosemary's Baby, like the Paramount opening of Rosemary's Baby, on the dawn of man at the very beginning of 2001: A Space Odyssey, after the opening with the planetary alignment, then the two films, if they're started at that point, one will say written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, while the other one says directed by Roman Polanski. So like they just happen to just meet that way if you set it up that way. They weren't just friends, they played off of each other, Polanski and Kubrick. So like they watched this is in the 60s, I guess, late 60s, when Fearless Vampire Killers came out. Kubrick actually went to Polanski's home to watch the film, I think even before its release. So, they obviously knew each other, but there's examples like Tess and Barry Lyndon seem highly resonant. There's something going on there. We have not just period pieces, but the way they follow the plight of the one a girl, one a boy, and their particular like circumstances. They're very, very complementary, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so Full Circle, The Haunting of Julia is two characters representing each of those films, 2001: A Space Odyssey and Rosemary's Baby, and they have a child who at the very beginning of the movie chokes on a green apple. So like, and Mia Farrow attempts to perform a tracheotomy, and in the process kills her child. And this movie deals with seance, and basically it's called Full Circle because you have to have the full circle of people when you perform the seance. And so they're trying to contact their child, and they end up contacting another child, don't realize it initially. It's kind of complicated and weird. But that movie pairs with two albums, Double Fantasy, which was John Lennon's last album, and Milk and Honey, which was his first and only, I think, post-mortem album, because he was working on it at the time of his death. So yeah, pretty nuts.
Yeah, that's wild. That's a wild one. All right, moving on. Here's another one that I think people will appreciate as well: The Matrix and Office Space. So you got two movies here.
This is like a film collage. So basically, what I'm doing is I found all the examples. I think after the fact I made it, I think I found even more. But the correspondences between Office Space and The Matrix, they came out the same year in 1999. So like it starts with the Mike Judge cartoon, which like you'd have to see it. Like all the particulars around this to get into it, but it gets really biblical because you have two biblical characters, right? So Thomas is the name of the character in that what's his name plays in that Neo of Jesus Christ, so many things. Keanu Reeves, thank you. Keanu Reeves plays a character named Thomas, who is a disciple of Jesus. And in Office Space, what the main character's name is, another disciple who's the one with the who casts the net and gets all the fish. God, what's his name? It's been so long. Yeah. So Thomas, it means twin.
Peter.
Peter. Thank you. Derp. So yeah, so it's Peter and Thomas, and then the way that the particulars of how, like, Peter will come in with the fish and he fillets it at his cubicle. You know what I mean? Like it's like it's ridiculous. Like the amount of correspondences between them. Like be like, buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye. And then what's her name from Friends? Jennifer Aniston will have the button that's like, we're not in Kansas anymore, and then Peter will comment on it, we're not in Kansas anymore. And she says, oh, you say that again? He goes, oh, your button, and she's like, oh, the flare. But yeah. There's like just example after example after example, and they're both like Office movies. You know what I mean? Being liberated from this kind of, and it speaks to the times too. Like approaching the millennium and all this stuff. So yeah, no, there's. Yeah, you get the idea. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun, like just back and forth to just see all these different examples of that. And then I kind of look at like fire and water, and like one who baptized you by water and one will come that baptizes you by fire, and how that like is applied in both movies. There's like the office fire, the office burns down by fire, and then there's like there's a whole thing going on. Yeah,
interesting. That's cool, man. This is awesome. We'll pop through a few more if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm here. Yeah.
So here you got Lucifer Rising, you got 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then you got, what is that, Metal? Is that Metal by Pink Floyd?
It's Metal. So this one, I almost like hesitated for a long time to even put this up, even though I had done this in 2010. So like this was, so if you look at the one in the corner, this is a recording that I did. Like, so my DJ name was MK Ultrasound, is MK Ultrasound.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I had like a party at my house at the time in 2010 that I set this intention that I was like, tonight I'm going to make the soundtrack to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And I took about 8 hits of LSD.
Damn.
Before I did this. It was somebody's birthday party actually. So like part way through the recording, it's just like I leave a 303 sampler playing with like this electronic breathing sound, and like you wouldn't know this, but as that's happening, they're singing happy birthday to my housemate, and then I come back in with the music, and the way that it lands with the film is like couldn't have been better. So like you have to see it, to appreciate it. But yeah, so I left that, and then the second part is something else entirely, because it's not the entirety of the film. It goes up to a point, and then if this is of the same time and level that playing Dark Side of the Moon, The Wizard of Oz was playing the Pink Floyd song Echoes with the Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, the final sequence of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So if you start, that song starts with like the submarine, like bing sound, of echoes. So if you get that bing to start on the second, that after the person who David Bowman is getting the recording from, which is Haywood Floyd, when Haywood Floyd is talking about the monolith and he says its origin and purpose still a total mystery. And then it, right after that, you see it says Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite. So if you get that bing to start on Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, from that second, it says Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite to written and directed by Stanley Kubrick, that's exactly 23 minutes and 26 seconds long, which happens to be the exact same length as Pink Floyd Echoes, which is the entire B-side of Metal. Metal, by the way, is to meddle with something that isn't yours, right?
Yeah.
So this is, and so Lucifer Rising happens to be the length. So the Pink Floyd song Embryo didn't appear on any Pink Floyd album, like studio album. It appeared on a compilation album called Works, which all the other songs appear on other studio albums with the exception of Embryo. So, and the timing of this too in relationship to when Metal was released is significant too. So if you take Pink Floyd Embryo and you follow it with the A side of Metal, that's the exact same length as Lucifer Rising from Kenneth Anger. So basically what I do is I insert that into 2001: A Space Odyssey and make it match to the point at which, if you were to directly follow that with Echoes, where that happens to land, if that makes sense. So it's all one thing. So so the first part of the pairing that you're showing on my website, that is me on a fucking crazy trip, just playing records and fucking with the 303 sampler. And then the rest of it is actually like, you could entertain, this is something that is possible that these creators, did like, this is the thing. My thing, I know that it's intentional because I fucking did it, even though I'm using other people's stuff in order to do it, and it's kind of its own kind of musical collage, right? Because it's a DJ set, but that was what I intended to do at that time back in 2010, that night. So, and then in the morning, I put it on VHS by myself in my little space and was just like, after, I'm coming down, and I just saw what it was that I had recorded on a mini disc. So yeah.
Damn, that must have been quite the come down. Well, there we go. We got the behind the scenes. We got the behind the scenes talk on that track. It's like behind the music, Led Zeppelin or something. Mm-hmm. All right, here we go. We got The Walk, which is 9/11 related, obviously, in a way. And Leonard Cohen, Popular Problems, is that the album with Everybody Knows?
No, the album with Everybody Knows is God, what is that called? I'm Your Man, I think. But no, this, which is its own. So I've explored everything with Leonard Cohen with album film stuff. Oh yeah, I'm obsessed. Yeah,
cool. Yeah, he's pretty good. Pretty darn good.
But the documentary that was made about Philip Petit, if I'm pronouncing that right, excuse me, I'm not French, but the guy who put this wire between the two towers that happened in the 1970s. The documentary about that guy, that's like the big official documentary, is called Man on a Wire. Okay. There's a documentary of Leonard Cohen called Bird on a Wire, named after, obviously, his song Bird on a Wire. I paired these two together for a variety of symbolic purposes before I realized, when I started messing with because this is an example too where there's volume between all the vocals, from the film in between all the vocals. I raised it. I didn't know when I first started that a woman in this actually sings Suzanne in French. And it just happens to land in between the songs. So like, just saying, like, as I was working on this, I'm turning the volume up and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm hearing Leonard Cohen right now. Like, what the hell? Like in the movie. So like, if you're working, like, that's actually happened a few times. That happened with Marilyn Manson's, what is it called? We Are Chaos. One of his last albums. I paired it with House of Wax. and I get to the end of the pairing. Just I'd gone through the whole freaking movie, raising the volume up between all the vocals, meticulous, long process. I get to the very end, and I'm hearing Marilyn Manson do a rendition of the Doors song "The End," and I'm like, wait, what? Wait, what? And it's like it's the movie. Like the movie ends with Marilyn Manson. I didn't know that because I'd never seen it before. I didn't find out until I got to the very end. With this example, I found out not that long into it because it's relatively towards the beginning of the movie that she's singing Suzanne. But yeah, it's like, wait, what? Yeah,
that's cool, man. That's cool. Well, that's some interesting syncs there for sure. Let's see. This one sounds kind of fun and maybe obvious in a way to give it a try.
Yeah,
so,
that's ridiculous.
You got Sidney Lumet, directed by Sidney Lumet, one of my favorite directors. He's got a lot of good movies. The Wiz, with Elton John's "Goodbye Yellow Brick Road."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was the first Motown movie, as far as I know. Like that was like a Motown produced film, right? So yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack here. I don't know if I can go through all of it, but you might, if you've seen this movie, you know how weird it is.
Which is good.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the ground zero sequence in the middle of this movie with the sphere. You know about that? So,
I haven't seen it yet. Actually, I haven't seen.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when they actually arrive at Emerald City, hold on, let me get some water here.
It's on my list though.
So when they arrive at Emerald City, they open the what do you call it? Like a vault, right? It's like a bank vault, and they enter in. It leads them directly to what would be ground zero. So they're in between the two towers, and they perform this whole number there. That's the point at which the album repeats. So the first song on the album is called "Funeral for a Friend." Love lies bleeding in my hands. The way that song lands with that scene where they have this dance number performance with a grand piano at ground zero at the sphere is freaking nuts. So like this movie has this sync has a major payoff in the middle of the movie that's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, you know, you're like looking around like, no, this can't be. So yeah, I recommend checking it out. I recommend watching the whole thing, but if you want to jump to that, I wouldn't judge you, because holy cow. But yeah, I feel like there's more to say there. There's like, if you look at the cover, you know, there's the bluebird there. See that bluebird in the distance? Like he's stepping into an illusion, right? So he's stepping into a picture. Everything's run down. And it's like, if you look at the backside of the cover too, this is like industry is taking over. Everything's going to crap. But you're walking into this picture. There's the argument for The Wizard of Oz, you know, especially like when the film came out. Like it's weird. Like if you think L. Frank Baum, who was a theosophist, did he know all this? I don't really know. I actually talk about this a little bit in my Sync Book 2 chapter. But that, you know, there's the argument that The Wizard of Oz was kind of like this subliminal programming to get us to accept paper currency rather than gold. Like it's backed by gold, but people are literally like trading in gold for paper. Like how, like this, and it's because of the desperation wanting to come out of the Depression, right? It's like the Depression happened, and then like, you know, and so when that movie came out, we're coming out of the Depression. So like there's the argument that the movie is like conditioning us to like accept, like through being strong-armed, that in order for us to be okay, we have to accept this new thing of paper currency. You know, we didn't have that. Everything is like, you know, physical metal, you know. So it's just like, what are we doing? So the idea of this album, like obviously Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, it's like, what is the yellow brick road? Is it gold leading to paper and fakeness? Because in The Wizard of Oz, you know, the wizard, he doesn't have any real magic. The witch, she's got real magic. She can make a goddamn fireball appear in her hand and throw it at the scarecrow. Like she's in touch with the elements, you know what I mean? Like, but he's got nothing. It's all just fake, you know. Like that's the thing of the wizard, is that he's all using fear to control the population. And then, like, you know, there's a whole thing like Glenda sends her off to get the broom to like murder the witch. Like what? Like it's, you know, who, I mean, I'm not even going there. I'm not going to talk about Wicked. I don't care, like whatever it is what they did over there. Like I'm just like what the film is.
Yeah,
'Cause,
whatever,
I mean, people,
whatever that is.
it's a different conversation to talk about film sometimes than it is to talk about a book. So like Kubrick is an obvious example of that. If we're discussing The Shining, are we talking about Kubrick's The Shining, or are we talking about Stephen King's The Shining? You know what I mean? Like they're two different things. He made him his own. So like the film The Wizard of Oz, like if you just take it on its own level, like as though the book didn't exist, there's certain things that you can extrapolate. So to have this, you know, Motown version with Diana Ross and Michael Jackson and like everything about it, it's like it's already the alternate reality, like, you know, with the silver slippers. But then and Richard Pryor and whatever, you know. But then to take Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, this is like it's cosplaying a Motown album when it's not. You know what I mean? Like he's white.
Yeah.
There's not very many white Motown people. I think there's maybe one or two. You know what I mean? I think one of them was a drummer, maybe. You know what I mean? But like,
Right.
but there's something about like because sync sometimes will be like you can relate to things like opposites. You know what I mean? Like sync in the Bible, one of my favorite examples is the Hebrew word aram is the same word for cunning and naked. I was just talking about this on Think Tank yesterday, actually, but like
Nice.
it comes up sometimes. But like these are two verses side by side in Genesis where the Adam and Eve are naked and not ashamed. And that same word appears in the very next verse for this introducing the serpent, who's the most cunning of all the creatures in the garden. Cunning is hidden, naked is exposed. So they're opposites. So they have the same word. But you'll find examples where things have the same gematria. So like Mashiach, the Hebrew for Messiah, has the same gematria as Nachash, which is serpent. So you have the serpent and the Messiah. Like if you know in Numbers 21, you know they put the serpent on the pole to heal the poisoned multitude. So they've been poisoned by serpents, and then there's the healing serpent. So you'll see this referenced in Freemasonry as the brazen serpent, right? But there's arguments that, you know, people have argued that that symbol for money with the S with the line through it is actually meant to be a serpent on a pole, you know, which speaks to Numbers 21. The first time that we ever had a coin that was referred to as a dollar, from Thaler or whatever, it's German. The first coin to have that pictured a serpent on the cross, a serpent on a pole on one side of the coin, and Jesus on a cross, on his cross on the other. And on the cross it said NU 21 for Numbers 21, which is where Moses puts the serpent on the pole in the Tanakh. And so, you know, and also the gematria of those two words, Messiah and serpent, in Hebrew is 358, which happen to be Fibonacci numbers in order, which is interesting in regards to the serpent. If you ever read like the Cosmic Serpent or anything like that. So I'm just saying, like, I'll see that happen with album film stuff, where sometimes it's like the reason why they resonate is because they're opposites. So like The Wiz and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road would be an example of that, even though the obvious connection is that they're both referencing the Wizard of Oz. They're both plays on the Wizard of Oz, but they're also like, you know, they're complementing each other in their different avenues, you know. So it almost feels like blasphemy to take a white guy and put him over the black film, you know, like, but that's what it wants to be. So I let it happen, and then I see what happens. And I'll tell you, man, when Love Lies Bleeding in My Hand plays at ground zero halfway through the film, it's like, oh my God, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah. And you know that story with that sphere, right? Between the two towers was so Wikipedia has changed. I have screenshots to prove somewhere in my hard drive of what it used to be. Also, there's Jake Coates' videos that show it too, where they used to explain on Wikipedia that the sphere that was between the two towers was designed by the same person who designed those two towers, same main guy. It was his art project. And according to him, in his own words, it was meant to symbolize the Kaaba at Mecca. And they would turn the sphere every 24 hours to in his own words, to symbolize the people who would rotate around the Kaaba, at the end of their pilgrimage, to try and touch that stone that's in the corner of the Kaaba, the ben or whatever, yeah, something like that, yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, it's super nuts. So yeah, for them to they perform a ritual in the film The Wiz, circling around that sphere that itself circles, that's meant to be symbolic of the Kaaba. And like, and coming out of what we came out, like, if you know the story of Malcolm X too, it's even more like, what the hell? Because this is the thing with Motown, is like, what did Malcolm X want that was different from Martin Luther King? He wanted Black people to have their own stuff, their own,
Yeah.
districts and businesses and all this stuff. And like, that's kind of what Motown represents too, right? Like, I mean, it's not generally like militant like that. It's like, it's pretty, it's pretty mellow, especially Marvin Gaye wrote so many songs, and Isaac Hayes for Motown, like, what their philosophy wasn't the same as Malcolm X, but it was more similar to Malcolm X after he went to Mecca. So Malcolm X had his view, Farrakhan, and his whole,
Right.
what he was a part of with the Muslim Brotherhood. But when he actually went to Mecca, saw white Muslims, had to, like, he got rocked psychologically, because he had his own sense of what he was a part of. And then when he saw the greater view of what was actually there and what he was exposed to, and Jews as well, when upon his visit, and the way people were to the degree that they did, like the coexistence aspect, like he came back and shook Martin Luther King's hand, like he like had this whole adjustment. And so, like, it's weird to say, but like, I see all of that in something like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road with The Wiz. Like, it's all, like, it's hard to explain, kind of, but there's like, just when you take things that are apparently in opposition and you see them harmonize, there's something like kind of really satisfying, like reconciling about that, like that's like alchemy, is when you take things that are apparently contrary and you see the way that they can harmonize.
Yeah, man, for sure. That's cool. That's a cool way of looking at it. I like that.
Sure.
Here's one that I was actually looking at earlier. Home
Oh, yeah.
Alone and Dangerous, Michael Jackson.
Yeah. It's even
So,
the timing of them, because like a lot of these, it's like, this is like an era, and if you like live through it, then it's like it's even more satisfying. Because like, I remember at the time, like, now I'm of the opinion, and this is well backed, and I'm not alone with this, I don't think Michael Jackson was a bad guy at all. In all likelihood, he himself was a victim of molestation and all kinds of abuse, and they came after him for other reasons, you know what I mean? So like, a lot of other reasons. It's not just one thing, as far as I can tell. And so, he got scapegoated like crazy. And yeah, there's some, this is a Dave Chappelle bit about Macaulay Culkin and Michael Jackson, where he's just like, if Macaulay Culkin says Michael Jackson didn't, try anything on him, then that alone speaks volumes, because it's like,
yeah, right.
like, he's funny about it. He was like, I don't know about you, but if I was, into children and I had Macaulay Culkin at my house, it seems like that, he would have been number one target, but he didn't say that. So, whatever. But I think what it was that, Michael Jackson, having been abused himself, was more of a protector for people who themselves were also, vulnerable to abuse or had themselves been abused. So, I think it's interesting that Macaulay Culkin had the Pizza Underground, with the band that he was in was called Pizza Underground, where they took Velvet Underground songs and made them all about pizza. And then like Pizzagate happens, and you're like, I don't know, it could be a coincidence, but it just feels like, was he ordered like pizza? Is that what we're saying? Is like, I don't really know. But yeah, there's some good parts to this. Black or White, when it plays in this film, corresponds to when Kevin McAllister, Macaulay Culkin's character, steals a toothbrush, and he's running away, and the woman's like, "Stop, get that boy!" And he's like, slides across the ice, and he's all running away. Black and White plays for that part. It's pretty funny, because it feels like it doesn't matter if you're black or white. You stole the goddamn toothbrush, they're coming after you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
That's cool, man. Back to MJ. What are your thoughts about the what are they? The two, now there's two, the two documentaries, Leaving Neverland, and the the kids now grown up who are behind involved in those movies, documentaries.
The best documentary I know of on Michael Jackson is actually called I think it's called A Man in the Dark, and it was produced by somebody named Jesse Goldsmith. It's like over 4 hours long. There's no narration. It's almost like the style of what I did with Sorry Cassandra, where it's just like it's just a it's very carefully edited documentation back and forth throughout Michael Jackson's whole life, like him on the dating game at 8 years old, flashing to him as an adult, and every time he clips back and forth, there's irony and implications. So it's incredible. Finding Neverland, that whole documentary came out. It was, I think that's what it's called, whatever it was, the HBO one.
Yep.
The date that he gave for his claims, that the producer of that, Neverland hadn't been built yet. Like, he debunked the whole thing. Yeah, he screwed up. Like, he made some serious claims, and central to those claims happening at all fall apart immediately when you look at the timeline. So he didn't do his proper his due diligence in making those claims. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
Wow. Jeez, yeah, because I haven't seen the second one, so, and yeah, I'm not up to date on the claim, the facts behind.
I just want to say some weird things about Michael Jackson, if I may.
You may.
In terms of 2001: A Space Odyssey. So so in front of his childhood home, there's actually a large monolith that stands in front of it with an image of him doing the moonwalk on the monolith. Like, you can look it up pretty easily, probably, but yeah, it's bizarre. And so the thing is, Moonwalker, right? He was the Moonwalker. He had the chimp named Bubbles. Remember, he had that ape, the monkey. I'm kind of playing psychedelic leapfrog here a little bit, but the character in the film 2001: A Space Odyssey that played Moonwatcher, as he's named in the book, the first ape to touch the monolith, who's also the ape that hits the bones, when he's, having his evolutionary shift in consciousness. That ape was played, the person in the outfit was the director of photography for John Lennon's Imagine video. Moonwatcher was the DP for John Lennon's Imagine. So there's something kind of weird about like Michael Jackson's like resonance with like why a monolith with him being the Moonwalker on the monolith in front of his childhood home, like, and then there's also the ET connection, I went to a lot of trouble with this. This is so ridiculous. Somewhere on Twitter, I actually have like a video that I put together. I could have taken even more time on it, but at a certain point, I was like, this is just too much. What am I doing? But there's a record that Michael Jackson produced where he does like story time narration of ET, like when it came out. Like, he just loved ET. And so it's like, it's so weird. But I just like, in that record, he used sound clips from the film E.T. And so like, I like wanted to just like have those visually attached. So like to dub them together. So like I have E.T. on mute and just the sections that are being referenced as they occur. So somewhere on Twitter, if you're to search my account and just type in Michael Jackson or whatever, you'll probably find him. But I have like a whatever it was, 30 minutes or something of that record. I have like visual accompaniment for Michael Jackson's whole ET record. It's freaking ridiculous. But like, ET ends with the drum roll from Also Spake Zarathustra, the song from 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's like dun 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 dun. So the moment that ET takes off, and there's like a rainbow trail from behind the spaceship, at the end of the film, there's a drum roll from 2001: A Space Odyssey there. Like, it's just There's symbolism, man. It's weird.
Damn. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm gonna ask you one more. In the meantime, if anyone in the audience has any questions, throw them our way, and I'm sure David would be happy to answer them. So Marilyn Manson, Mechanical Animals, and Valley of the Dolls, which I have seen that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, good. You saw The Sync? Cool.
Yeah.
Or you've seen Valley of the Dolls?
I've seen Valley of the Dolls.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm a big
Yeah,
classic movie guy, so I've seen a lot of older stuff.
so you'll notice, like, if you look at the poster art for the film here of Valley of the Dolls, you'll see that there's a pill there, right? And you got
Yep.
these colors, the red, the yellow, and the blue as such. If you got this album on CD, it came in a blue case. And if you opened it up, you could get secret messages that are in the booklet of the album that you won't see unless if you press it against the blue see-through cover. So, and it used yellow. So it's like encoded. It's super weird. First of all, you know that this was, Sharon Tate was in this film, when she says that witch ought to be burned in oil and all that kind of stuff. This is so like central to Hollywood mythology, right? Like there's so lot to unpack with Valley of the Dolls, like Marilyn Manson in Hollywood would say the Valley of the Dolls is the Valley of the Dead, Death Valley, connecting to Manson, their hideout, of the family and all this kind of stuff. Oh, you found it. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's like these encoded little messages in there. So yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, if you watch the music video for the Dope Show, which is the second song on this album,
yes, I've
there's
seen
like
that.
He's just, first of all, like the cover of this album, like he's a mannequin, just to be clear. Like mannequins show up in Valley of the Dolls. Like there's a point where Patty Duke's character is like walking along, and there's, they're looking at mannequins, and the guy that she's with asks her about her sorority pin, and she says it could mean everything or nothing, and he says I'll go with nothing. But like the video for this album is basically showing you, first of all, that he's like a walking mannequin, but also that it's a human zoo. So they're like treating it like they're like people that they're putting in a zoo. And if you know Valley of the Dolls, like when she goes to rehab, when Patty Duke's character goes to rehab, by the way, according to Patty Duke herself, she's playing Judy Garland in the movie. Judy Garland was brought every day before production started for this movie. They kept her there all day, and under the guise that they would actually have her in the film, but they just wanted to use her for her movements, which are imitated by Patty Duke when she's performing like a number, and she looks very mechanical in the way that she's dancing or she's moving, and she's imitating Judy Garland's screen tests for this film. So they basically tortured Judy Garland, and Judy Garland shortly died of barbiturates not that long after. She wasn't used in this film as a character that was like, she wasn't acting in this movie, but she was used as a template for, it's very fucked up. According to Patty Duke, the director is a son of a bitch and just put was just a terrible person, had no regard for Judy Garland and all this stuff. It's totally crazy. Yeah, so this album, it has like I don't like the drugs, but the drugs like me. It speaks to all these things. Oh, what I was going to say is that when she's in rehab and she gets visited by somebody, she explains how she felt that she was in a human zoo. She likens the place, the rehab, to a human zoo. In that music video for the Dope Show, they're showing the same thing. It's like almost like taking what Patty Duke describes and just like playing it out, like, yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. You just kind of reminded me of just talking about directors and documentaries and stuff. Have you seen the documentary of Richard Stanley and the Island of Dr. Moreau?
No, I've seen the different versions of the Island of Dr. Moreau, but no, I've never seen this documentary.
Oh, really? Well, I actually haven't even seen. I hadn't even seen the movie, but William Ramsey told me about this documentary, and it is really good. There's so much stuff behind it, with like disasters going on in the filming, whether it be funding, dealing with Val Kilmer, dealing with Marlon Brando, or some of the other actors. Some actors were just terrorized. Richard Stanley got a pretty bad rap in so many ways. There's a lot of like occult and rituals and curses and artifacts within, and like all sorts of wild stuff. Like it's really good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah, I highly recommend you check that out. So yeah, that's awesome, man. No, I really appreciate your work. It's really cool. I definitely recommend everyone check it out. So how long have you been doing this things for now?
Oh, well, I was saying, like, since
Quite a while, right?
yeah, well, I was
Over
saying
two-
I'm 44
I mean,
and I've been doing it since junior high, so I think it's been 28, 29 years, something like that. I don't know. I have to think about it. Yeah. It could be 30, I don't know. Yeah.
well, props to you, because that's really cool.
Yeah, I think the first one that wasn't Pink Floyd was Antichrist Superstar and Jesus Christ Superstar. And I was just curious of what would happen there. And that one actually took years to get the appropriate timing. So I always felt like a resonance between the two, but the technical timing is when the movie starts with a blue bus driving up that all the characters get out of, and when the door of the blue bus opens, that's when you start the album. But just so you know, I didn't notice this at first because I was watching it on VHS, and it wasn't until years later that I zoomed in on a digital version. I could see that the license plate of that bus in Jesus Christ Superstar actually says 666. So I was like, "Oh,
damn!" There you go, man.
bus. That's trippy." Yeah, and I was also thinking of the Doors too, with the blue bus is calling us in the end. But I don't know,
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that is a powerhouse of a sync, is Jesus Christ Superstar and Antichrist Superstar. But that started it off where I was just like, because at the time I was like, I wasn't even thinking about, I just went through Pink Floyd's entire catalog before I touched anything else. And then it was like, that was one where I was like, that seems like the obvious thing to do. No, like it's the same
Nice.
title. Like, come on, like, and it's a musical film, so wouldn't it make sense? But yeah, no, that's a heavy hitter. And that one really, the album does loop, and half the album doesn't play a second time because it's such a long album. But the song "The Reflecting God" and "The Man That You Fear," like the way that those land when Jesus has his transfiguration, what some people say is Mount Hermon. It doesn't explicitly say that in the gospel, but it's indicated because of the where he was before and where he is after, that's where it was, which is interesting because that Mount Hermon for Hermes, and Pan was the son of Hermes, there was a cult, like a Pan cult, that existed at the base of that mountain and all that stuff. And to relate that to the transfiguration is really symbolic. If you're talking about that golden bough argument that Fraser would sometimes make about what the church went after him for, was like Christianity having these pagan roots, so like that's there in the first place with the film, if you know some of that. Not that I don't even think Lloyd, what was his name, Weber, what's his I forget the name of the producer of Jesus Christ Superstar. Shouldn't, because he did like everything, Fan of the Opera. And, Andrew Lloyd Webber, is that it? No, that's an actor who was in Wings. Who the fuck did those movies? Yeah, forget his name, but yeah.
Norman Jewison.
Oh, he was the director, I guess, but I'm talking about the actual writer.
Robert Stigwood.
No. It's okay. Never mind. I'm talking about the Broadway, I guess. Where?
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Oh, that is it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, you got it.
We're getting to that point in the conversation. Maybe it's a sign. But I mean, I keep talking if you want me to. But no, I was just saying that I feel like Marilyn Manson's album kind of speaks to the roots of the thing that go beyond the because his attack has always been on the organized religion and hypocrisy of the organized religion, like where he's like, I never really hated the one true God, it's the God of the people I hated. That's been his stance. So you can see that more explicitly in this pairing than you would if you were just listening to his music on its own because of the way that the two meet. Like it articulates a lot. Like it's a big old download, which is also true for Hollywood and Holy Mountain. Like it's a lot of encoded information, you know. Yeah.
Um, who's your favorite band? Do you have a favorite band?
Do I have a favorite band of all time?
Yeah, or a couple. Like
Of my
is
favorite
Pink?
bands, I like the Doors. I like Pink. I'm
Yeah,
religious about Pink Floyd. You know.
yeah, I can see like in Pink
Yeah.
Floyd.
I like Tool a lot. You
Oh,
know.
nice. Okay.
I've like and Tool albums we could sync stuff I could get into too. I mean, Maynard has acknowledged synchronicity stuff in the same way that Alex Gray has, who's contributed his artwork to his stuff. You know, in fact, Jordan Barty in 2020 made an amazing short film connecting predictions, whether conscious or not, from Tool and Alex Gray as far as COVID went. And that video, I'm not sure if it was his video or mine or both, that got Joe, who I was talking about earlier with the
Yeah.
Chicago Bulls. We were allowed to post on his Vimeo page, not his YouTube, but his Vimeo page. Freaking Vimeo, in the 2 weeks to flatten your face, took his whole account down. And it may have been me sharing Tool's album Fear Inoculum with Midsommar.
Oh,
It's a pairing I recommend. It's incredible. But I put that on his page at the same time as Jordan Parti put this video up that was like literally them talking about what the meanings of their stuff was. It was an interview with Maynard, and it was an interview with Alex Gray about the two towers showing up in his artwork, in Alex Gray's artwork, before, with a plane, before they went down, like before 2001, and how weird that was in one of his old paintings. And then Jordan Barty was showing how, like, if you look at this album cover for Fear Inoculum, how it matches the image that we were being shown at the time of this is what COVID looks like that red pokey molecular structure, you know.
yeah.
So it's like, it was just like, and he's going back and forth between the two, and it was a really cool video. And so yeah, the account got shut down, and we don't know if it was whose video it was that upset them, if it was a copyright thing or if it was a narrative thing. But I'll tell you that all the sync heads, during, anyone who wanted to say anything, any weird synchronicity stuff around COVID at the time, we got, I mean, I had my account shut down for Facebook. You know, it's just like the day and year that my account was shut down for Facebook was the day and year of the biggest stock loss of any single company in the history of the stock market, and it was Meta. So like thousands of people, tens of thousands of people or whatever, got their accounts removed all on the same day after a White House order made at Facebook that Zuckerberg has since confirmed that they were basically, all these people got shut down if they were against the narrative. But what was so crazy was, I was like, you know, because conspiracy is like a shell, you know, that if you go deeply enough into conspiracy while still acknowledging that conspiracies that exist, and here are some conspiratorial stuff that we can document, and blah, 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 Mockingbird, you name it, MK Ultra, whatever. If you keep going into it, like every genuine synchead that I've ever met has started with conspiracy before they've gone into sync. Like, you don't skip that process, because you have to penetrate deeply enough into conspiracy to get at the point where you start to see these more like profound connections that transcend humans goings on in a conscious way. And so, you know, and I would argue that it's just partly to do that we're not separate from nature, and that you'll see, you know, the same orders that exist in nature. When, like, in Pi, he would talk about like the cycling of disease epidemics, the rise and fall of the Nile, how everything around us can be represented and understood through numbers. And when you graph the numbers of any system, patterns emerge. There are patterns everywhere in nature. And then, you know, we'll see that in our own goings on in certain ways, and media is a good place to document that. But it doesn't, it's everywhere. You know, you'll find examples of that where it's just like there's the hidden hand, and there's people just being manipulative and conspiring in all kinds of ways, and the two happen at the same time, and sometimes it feels like a line in the sand. And so for like sync heads, like if we want to like even communicate around sync stuff, because of the nature of the control structure in for social media and just the internet in general, like we'll we'll bump uglies with the powers that be in all kinds of ways just by wanting to explore correspondence. If you just, because correspondence is, that's how people connect that red string to draw out the synchronicities, is through this corresponds to this. But as a sync head, you're not even necessarily accusing anybody of anything per se, just because you find a resonance or a correspondence. So it's kind of like, has been at times like the bane of my existence, is just like, can I just, I mean, copyright is one thing, just being able to have a place where I can show my work online. Like I go to a lot of trouble to find the resonance of something in the first place before I've even gone to the trouble then to edit it together and then to share it with the world, and that they can replicate the experiment too. Like, so I'm like trying to treat it in a scientific way, but copyright's been bad enough, and now I have to deal with narrative stuff like, oh, so what are you trying to say? Like, but I don't know. I hope all of that I hope that things evolve in that way, because I feel like there's something to like different types of research that we should just be allowed, to work with. Like sometimes it kind of reminds me of if you've ever seen that movie Pleasantville, where Jeff Daniels' character, like he wants to paint, and like they're coming down on the ear, like, and he's like, well, maybe you could just tell me which colors I'm allowed to use, like maybe you could just, like he's just trying to work with them, it's like, yeah. I feel like that sometimes,
Yeah, fair enough, man.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we wrap up, we can just comment on a few things going on in movies in Hollywood. So obviously, Rob and Michele Reiner were murdered, allegedly by their son, which is just terrible. Doesn't matter what your political views are, doesn't matter if you can get crazy sometimes, that's just awful. The first time I heard about it this morning really was someone's like obscure tweet making fun of his death, and I didn't catch the fact that he had died at first because it was so obscure, or they were trying to be obscure. And then I was at the gym and it popped up on the news, and I couldn't believe it. And then I found out that it was the son, and it was just like, or it could have been the son, allegedly.
Could have been the son. He's being held on $40 million bail or something crazy.
Is that right, eh? Wow.
Or maybe it was 4 million. I shouldn't spread. I don't even remember. I just remember that 4 in there.
Still,
it's a lot.
It's millions of dollars of bail. Yeah. Either way, it's just wild, right?
Yeah.
So that's just wild, because he's Rob Reiner's, had his hand in so many great projects. From All in the Family,
Stand By Me,
All in the Family, and then
Meathead,
Tap was fucking awesome, obviously. And so that's terrible. So I don't know. I think you mentioned you don't really have anything to add to that, but is that,
well, I mean,
any thoughts?
I think that like When Harry Met Sally, that's like, that's a quintessential
that's a big
New York movie with Carrie Fisher, and but that's crazy, like that he met his wife while working on that or whatever, like, and originally it didn't have the same ending. Like originally they weren't actually going to get together at the end, and then like he meets his wife, which kind of influences the way that the ending was reevaluated. And so like that whole thing, like in that speech that Billy Crystal makes at the end, like that came from like Billy Crystal, like he wrote that, like, but like, because we're now going in this direction with it, but it's like couldn't be any other way. But to me that feels like kind of like a meta thing, like where he's doing art and then it goes in this real life implication direction for him, and all this stuff. So his wife died, who we met at that time, was found dead with him just last night or yesterday, I guess. So yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah, no, I didn't agree with a lot of his politics, because he was a very angry person when it came. Yeah. He was a very triggered person politically, and so but no, it's definitely not okay. It's tragic. So yeah, people reacting to Trump's tweet about it. This isn't an excuse, an explanation. Trump doesn't write those. Like we can see behind the scenes, there's instances where you can see he's got a group of people that are doing those for him. A lot of the time they presented to him, and he says what he likes or doesn't like,
Okay.
but like, Gavin Newsom has the same thing. He's got people writing this shit. It's just like, okay, I don't know. It's all such a ridiculous, drama. I don't, it's so over the top, but yeah, I don't like the, people trying to, agitate, using events to agitate. I mean, the thing happened. It's, they'll probably make a movie out of it one day. They'll have all
Yeah.
these actors portraying these people, and it's probably how it will go. They'll probably, who knows the future. I don't know.
Yeah. No, fair enough. Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
What about the kind of feud, or I guess not feud, but like Quentin Tarantino's comments on Paul Dano? Have you heard about that?
Yeah.
He's shitting all over, right? So what are your
Well,
thoughts?
it's just, but the thing, we actually, this came up on Think Tank yesterday with Will
Oh, okay.
Morgan, but it's fine. No, it's hilarious, kind of, because, I mean, he said that There Will Be Blood was like one of his favorite films of all time,
Right.
and that it would be even higher on his list if it wasn't for Dano. So, but he said he's weak sauce or whatever, and like I was just, my reaction to that was, in my own head, I could see him reacting to, like if somebody was to bring up Mia Wallace in Pulp Fiction eating that burger after she did a bunch of coke, and she's like, God damn,
Yeah.
and she's went and ate a burger. Like, that's, who the hell does that? No, I could see if somebody was to ask him about that, he'd be like, well, that's just who Mia Wallace is. Like, that is, like, I could see him saying something like that. And so for me, with There Will Be Blood, I'm like, that was Dano's character. Like, he was supposed to be this, kind of, yeah, like he was supposed to be weak sauce, quote unquote, like, like that was his character. He wasn't like this
Yeah.
great redeemable guy. So I don't even know what his argument was. He just doesn't like him, I guess. So he didn't like the film as much as he otherwise would. It's like, oh, whatever, but he talks, that's the thing. I have a love-hate relationship with Quentin Tarantino in that way, because I like that he speaks his mind, but I don't always just agree with him, but I saw something right afterwards. He said something about he does a lot of interviews, he does more interviews than what's his name, the other guy who he wrote Pulp Fiction with, Avery, and Avery's responsible for some of my favorite Quentin Tarantino stuff, portions of Quentin Tarantino things, like in Sleep With Me. I don't know if you've ever seen that clip of him talking about Top Gun. Quentin Tarantino's talking about Top Gun being subversion on a mass scale, where he says the whole thing is a gay allegory, where he's basically like, it's hilarious, it's funny as hell. And Quentin Tarantino saying it, it sounds like something that you're like, oh, this is Quentin Tarantino contributed this to the film, but actually, apparently, that was Avery's. So Avery, it was his contribution. And so, I don't know, like it's funny, but I like what he said about Toy Story 3. He was like, it should have just been a trilogy. He was like, that was one of those rare examples, like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where you have like three films come out, and then it's like each one surpasses the last. He's like, that really outdid it with Toy Story 3. And he's like, I haven't seen Toy Story 4, but you should leave it at that. Although I'll tell you a weird sync myself is that Toy Story 4 was released the same day and year as the Child's Play remake with Aubrey Plaza.
Okay.
It was more of like, I don't know if it was a remake, it was like a renewal of Child's Play. It's just called Child's Play. It wasn't like a number, but Child's Play, Toy Story, you get it? Yeah. And what's interesting about that is that Toy Story is overtly based off of Kubrick. So I don't know. Well, it's literally based off of what Kubrick based The Shining off of. So in Kubrick's own explanation of how he approached the production of The Shining, that he was heavily influenced by Freud's book, The Uncanny. And Freud's book, The Uncanny, is largely about inanimate objects coming to life and why that would be so terrifying. So say a child was playing with a doll and it spoke, or it turned its head in a way it's not supposed to, or something, why we're so affected by that, which relates to artificial intelligence, and which relates to his project of artificial intelligence, what he was trying to do, which is like totally antithetical for all intents and purposes to what Spielberg actually produced. Spielberg, in my opinion, pissed all over Kubrick's grave with that. Like, he did not take into account Kubrick's own handwriting for what he was going for in those. Kubrick had 3 different screenplay proposals that were commissioned from people, and they gave their pitches for the screenplay, and he had handwritten notes all the way through about what he wanted as a film. And if you look at that compared to what Spielberg did, it's completely something else. So like, he wanted to make for AI. He wanted to do it's terrifying. It's the most terrifying thing I've pretty much ever read for a film idea. And it was that the AI of the future uses our internet histories against us, and it starts with anybody who helped destroy the planet. So it's basically they go after politicians and they go after, the heads of these industries and all this stuff, and then they create custom hells for them based on their own beliefs. So they mirror back the worst parts of ourselves in order to do that. So in Kubrick's version, the only reason why the AI of the future agreed to bring the mom back for David. By the way, he's David because of David in the Bible and as it relates to Solomon's temple. So Solomon is told not to build David is told not to build the temple. Solomon builds it anyway and uses materials from an outside land to get around the instruction that you don't from Hashem that you don't build the temple. So like in Prometheus, the android's name is David. It's the same reason why in AI it's named David is because it relates to the temple, because to manufacture a human being in the image of us rather than in the image of God is, this is blasphemous thing or whatever. So Kubrick explained in his own words that the whole premise of AI was to be it's a retelling of the book of Revelation as a prophetic view of the future of AI manifesting our own beliefs, so that because we've projected the book of Revelation and the AI has access to that set of beliefs, it creates custom hells to make it real for the people that help destroy the planet. It's totally nuts. But the film Toy Story, the original, you'll notice that shining pattern in the carpet in the specific scene when Buzz Lightyear sees himself on the screen and realizes he's not real, and then he tries to fly and he can't actually fly, and he plummets. Like, the reason why you're looking at the shining pattern there is because of the moon landing. So like it's like he's Buzz Lightyear, right? To infinity and beyond, Jupiter and beyond the infinite. You know what I'm saying? So like it's encoded in everything, and it has everything to do with Freud's notion of the uncanny as it relates. Like the idea that when the child turns its head, the toys come to life. Like there's something really terrifying about that. So it was like he's using that, but then when they produced these movies of Toy Story, they encode 237 throughout all the movies, by the way. I don't know about the fourth one, but I know in the first three, it shows up subliminally all over the place. Because it could be the Jay Widener idea that you're talking about the distance, but I would say that there's deeper Kabbalah with 237, because 237 you can get from saying 6 times 6 times 6 is 216, which is the gematria of Gevurah. It's the number of a man in Hebrew, which is spoken to in the Greek of the book of Revelation when they say the number of a man, 666, because 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. But then if you add 7 plus 7 plus 7 to 216, you get 237. So it's the two orders of the Sephirot that you have: the sustaining order of the empire, that's the external shell that relates to the klipot and Gevurah, and then you have the actual organism itself. In the film AI, and in the original telling of it, you have him communicating the two orders of the Sephirot as Orga and Mecca. So they say what we manufacture, what we build, versus what we organically are, which encodes the lighting flash of creation and the Fibonacci sequence. And Plate, when his date asks if he has seen The Shining. I went on a date once. That was a great comment. I went on a first date one time, and within before we'd even ordered our meal, I brought up Pink Floyd, and she said I hate Pink Floyd. I pulled back. I stood up and I said, "You seem really nice, but this just isn't going to work. You have a good night." And I walked out.
Get the fuck out of there! Yeah, that's wild. Good for you. Good for you. Okay, final question, my friend.
Yes, sir.
So much of your time. What do you think? I mean, personally, I'm a fan of older movies. I like the 30s, not too bad. The 40s, really good, amazing actually, as well as like the 50s, 60s are great. 70s, pretty good, and it kind of tapers off with a lot of exceptions. But lately, movies I feel are for the most part a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of garbage out there. I've seen some good ones lately, like Weapons was really good.
Weapons was great, yeah.
Weapons was fucking awesome. him was a little out there, but I mean, it's something. But
It was
anyways,
worth watching. I don't
it's
jump
worth
to watch
watching. A
again
lot of
anytime
symbolism,
soon.
lot to break down there. It was pretty wild though.
Yeah.
So what do you think the future is going to be like now that AI is coming into play? You see people posting these movies that they've made with AI on X and stuff like that, or just mini movies or short story movies and stuff like that. So what's your thought on that? Is that going to be good? It's going to help? Is it going to make a lot of because there's also that one movie, it's even part of the Criterion collection, I think it's called Flow or something like
Yeah.
that, and it was all made on like an iPad or something, possibly with some AI, maybe not. But yeah,
Well,
where do you think the
through
future's going?
superficiality, we've already paved the way for it. So like, and you can see that really in the music industry, where music already, like a lot of pop music already sounds like what AI is just does. So like once we started moving more towards the vocoder, auto tune and these different shortcuts that are electronic in nature, like we've kind of set it up that this is, even more of an inevitability than it otherwise would be. Like if you try and get a musician to record on what they actually had like in Detroit with Motown, like if you actually use like they're using like a 4-track or something, you like had to get them to just like with a regular microphone, no extra anything, can you produce a good song? Most musicians can't, like really produce a true like to those standards. So I think just like with like records, like vinyl records, the way that they're selling more now than it's not just a population thing, it's ridiculous. Like vinyl records are selling more than they ever have in history, more than in the 70s, more than the 80s. Yeah, numbers of people play the big role, but the point is people are buying vinyl records, and people threw away their vinyl records thinking that they were done, right? Like at a time, like, and so
Right.
I could see that this is the big apocalyptic war, kind of is like like the actual organism versus the mecha, the orga and the mecha having this face off, and so this just, to me, I guess what I'm saying is it's like it feels like not only do we just pave the way for it, it feels like what's happening is like the ultimate extension of something that's a deeper issue, that's more of like a general philosophical leaning that people have, attention span, what it is that we appreciate. Like most of the like issues of what people could call like, I don't know, like a culture war, like wokeism, all this stuff. Like most of this just has to do with superficiality versus depth. People taking the most superficial, the topical level, as though it's the most significant. That's the problem with identity politics, right? But it's symptomatic. It's symptomatic of a deeper distortion that we have, where we take a replication as though it's more primary than the thing in itself, as Kant would say. So like, we have a replicant, and then we worship the replicant and put it on a pedestal. That's why it becomes at a certain point it becomes hard to even like define something like what is a woman or something like this, because as soon as you're taking the replication to be the thing in itself, then it's no end to how dysfunctional and crazy things can get. So like, yeah, I feel like ultimately the prophecy as it exists has to do with the nullification of the klepo, that this is inevitable. Like, First Corinthians 13, like, like all these things will come to pass, but what is central, what is most primary, always wins in the end. Truth wins in the end is just another way to say it. Like truth wins the whole time ultimately, but you can have the illusion that something else is taking precedence. So AI in a way could be troubleshooting evolutions wise, like getting us to actually question in ways that we otherwise wouldn't developmentally. Like all of these things that we could see as like detrimental to our growth could actually be ultimately encouraging our growth by getting us to shift our perspective and consider things in a different way than we otherwise ever could. So like, if you want to know who you really are, that doesn't come through affirmation, that comes from negation. You see who you're not, and in that process, eventually you can come to a place where it reveals itself. So like that, when I was first approached to do a podcast way back when with Always Record, like back in whatever when that started in 2011 or something, like I was like, I'm totally down, but I don't want to do this thing where we start out with our conclusion and then we spend our whole time trying to back up that conclusion. Like I want to accumulate information as much as we can, and if we do that right, and we just stack it up, it should reveal things on its own to some degree. And so like I was like, that's the direction that I want to go, and that speaks to, you know, the path to realization is more a path of negation than it is affirmation. At a certain point you can affirm something, but that's why like people are like talking about like affirm and gender affirming care. It gets weird because you're like, look, if the thing is what the thing, it shouldn't require any, like, truth requires no representation. You know what I mean? Like it should just speak for itself. Like that's the difference between passing and getting a pass, you know? But I think that we're projecting duality on top of a polarity. Like gender, naturally speaking, is a polarity. You know what I mean? Like just, you know, that there's a polarity that exists in nature that isn't, that we project a duality on top of. And the duality is judgment. The judgment doesn't actually exist in nature. You could say there's God's judgment and it's a higher judgment, but that's not our limited scope. That's something that's way deeper than anything that we could encapsulate, you know? So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, man. Well, fair enough. That's a great answer. That's a great answer, and I appreciate you giving it. And I appreciate you coming on and covering all these areas, sharing all your work. I had a great time. I truly would love to have you back. So I really hope that you enjoyed yourself. David Charles Plate, where can everyone find you? Where can they find you? Where can they find your work? Can you direct them, please?
I'm on Twitter more than most places, on X now, so you can find me at MK Ultrasound 723. That's my handle. If you go to this place and you look at the highlight section, you'll find like a long list of sync films for streaming, and you can actually download them if you go to a download site. Some of them have the download option on there, but yeah, I don't recommend watching these on your phone. I'm kind of with David Lynch on that. Like, just like watch a movie on your telephone. Come on. These are good to download and project. And so you can also see a link here that you can go to. Otherwise, it's thesyncbook.com / sync media research. That's on this page. There's a link there. Or if you go to thesyncbook.com, there's a section on videos. You'll see an image of Dorothy with a beam going through her head with the rainbow coming out the other side. That leads you here to what you're looking at on the screen here. And if you click on any one of these icons as you scroll down, you'll see that each and every one of these films is available for streaming and download. Some Apple products apparently aren't being cooperative for like the last year and a half or two with independent players. So like if you're like Netflix or YouTube or whatever, you won't have a problem, but they're kind of coming down on indie players. So like they kind of censor it a bit on certain products. But you can, every single one of those films, if you're having buffering issues for that reason or other reasons, there's a download option right below the video. When you open it, you'll see that there's a little thing that says download. So I recommend it. I would say that if you scroll through my album film pairings, and there's like, if you're familiar with an album and you're familiar with a film, if you're familiar with both, that's ideal. But one way or the other, if something jumps out at you that you're like, I know this, that's my best recommendation, because I'm naturally a very lyrically inclined person, and it's often a big part of these, is, you know, to be able to catch what's said. So if you know a film too, and you know the dialogue, even like to not hear the dialogue, but to know it, like you'll catch more. So like, for instance, I have a friend who's just like really into Chuck Palahniuk, I think it might be pronouncing that wrong, but the guy who did Fight Club.
Yeah.
She's obsessed with the book Fight Club, and she loves the movie Fight Club, and she's also obsessed with Meatloaf and Bat Out of Hell. So like I paired the two versions of Bat Out of Hell. There's Bat Out of Hell 1 and Bat Out of Hell 2. I played it with Fight Club. She watched it and her mind was fucking blown, because she was just like, wait a second. In the book, there's all these things that aren't in the film, but when you pair it with the album, it speaks to it. So like in really direct ways. So she was just like, how is this even possible? Yeah. And I wouldn't know that because I never read Fight Club. I mean, I read Choke, and I really liked it, and they screwed up with the movie with Sam Rockwell. It shouldn't have been a romantic comedy. It should have been dark like Fight Club was. But anyway, yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It's just sometimes, you know, the more that you know about the material, the more it imbues it. So
Yeah,
like
of
even like
course.
films are
Of
like
course.
that on their own. Like I love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I got a great sync with that with Lana Del
Yeah.
Rey. We didn't even really touch on much other than Bitter Moon and Honeymoon. But you know, the Lana Del Rey syncs are incredible. The ones that I have on the website. But like, you know, there'll be like with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I overheard people when I was walking out of the theater. I actually sang along to Never Say Never to Always, like the Manson Girls song, while I was by myself in the theater, and people were like, "What?" But I was leaving the theater, and I overheard some young, like I think they were college students, and they were just like, "What even was that?" Like they like didn't get it. They were like, "That was," you know, I didn't stop to talk to them. I did that once when somebody said something similar when I was leaving the Rum Diaries, and they were like, "What even was that?" I was like, "Just so you know." I feel like I come across as such an idiot asshole, but I'm just like, you know, to insert myself into two young people's conversation. I'm like, let me explain Hunter S. Thompson to you, you know, but
Hello,
yeah,
kids. Yeah.
yeah. You don't understand. There's this whole other thing that followed this, you know, but anyway, I overheard them say that, and I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, like I watched a different movie than them. Like we sat there and we had the same movie playing in front of us, but my experience was so radically different than theirs because I'm thinking about all of this other context and all these different connections. Because, you know, like when Manson comes to the door and Jay Sebring answers in that movie, it's like Jay Sebring didn't really answer that door. That was somebody else who left Hollywood over what had happened with Sharon. I was like, oh, that was a good, respectful thing that Quentin Tarantino didn't even include him because he left Hollywood over her death. Like, you know, like he's, you know, like there's just and his portrayal of Bruce Lee or something. I'm like, well, Bruce Lee was Polanski's first guess of who had done it because, you know, he was working with Sharon, you know, practicing for this movie and stuff. And he's like, who's even capable of this? And, you know, he even had like some glasses that were found on the scene inspected to see if they were his prescription because he was worried that maybe, you know, he was, but because of that, you see his portrayal in the film. I think that that's the reason. I mean, maybe there's other reasons, but, you know, and like, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I watched a different movie. So what you bring to it imbues it in a different way. The thing with sync films is the more oftentimes sync films have meta implications. They have meaning attached of how these things relate to each other in other places. You know, sometimes there's real world connections, and so the more familiar you are with all of that, or Hollywood mythology, or whatever, the more it imbues your experience. So you know, it's not just a standalone thing. It's and in this sense, it's Gonzo. It's like you are in it too because of how much you know or how much you can relate to the the other stuff. You know, like yeah.
Cool, man. I totally get it. You, well, man, you've blown my mind. I really appreciate your time. David Charles Plate, ladies and gentlemen. I'd love to have you back, and I had a wonderful time. Don't go anywhere. I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, all the listeners, viewers. Please subscribe to the Divulgence podcast on. We're on Rumble now. Back on Rumble. You can get us on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Yeah, please leave a nice comment or a nice review or something like that. Please subscribe. Have a very happy holidays. And yeah, stay safe out there, guys. Thanks again.